The hospital waiting room buzzed with tension, filled with patients, worried families, and the dull hum of machinery in the background. Amid the chaos sat a young mother, Emily, clutching her restless baby. Her eyes were tired, her hair disheveled, and her arms gently bounced the child in a futile attempt to soothe her cries. The baby squirmed and whimpered, drawing attention from those nearby. Whispers began to rise like smoke in the air. "Why would anyone bring a baby here?" someone murmured. "So irresponsible," another voice added. An older woman seated across the room gave a pointed glance, shaking her head with visible disapproval. To them, it looked like poor judgment, bringing a crying baby into such a stressful environment. Emily heard every word, felt every stare. But she remained silent, her eyes focused somewhere far away, her expression unreadable. She adjusted the baby's blanket and held her a little closer, brushing a kiss across her forehead. The baby's cries grew louder for a moment before settling into soft whimpers. No one noticed the way Emily's hands trembled slightly, or the way she blinked back tears. To the others in the room, she was just a tired mother making a poor choice. No one asked why she was there, or what burden she might be carrying. They simply judged. But Emily sat still, breathing deeply, waiting, for something more important than any of them could understand. A few hours passed, and the energy in the waiting room shifted between frustration and fatigue. Emily hadn't moved from her seat. Her baby had finally fallen asleep, nestled against her chest, one tiny hand gripping the edge of her coat. She hadn't eaten, hadn't stood up, hadn't spoken to anyone. Her eyes stayed on the corridor ahead, as if willing someone to come out with news. A nurse, noticing her quiet persistence, finally approached with a gentle smile. "Ma'am," she said softly, "are you waiting to be seen?" Emily looked up, startled out of her thoughts. She shook her head slowly. The nurse glanced at the baby, concern evident in her voice. "Is the little one okay? We could get someone to help, maybe call a family member to pick her up while you get checked." Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "She's not the patient." The nurse blinked, confused. "Then who is?" Emily's eyes glistened. "Room 212. My husband." The nurse paused, the pieces beginning to click together. Emily looked down at her sleeping daughter, brushing her fingers through the baby's fine hair. "He's been in a coma for 3 weeks. Every day I come here. I talk to him. I let him hear her cry. Laugh. I want him to remember we're still here." The nurse's face softened, touched by the quiet devotion. For the first time that day, someone looked at Emily not with judgment, but with understanding. The nurse gently guided Emily to a quieter corner, offering her a chair and a bottle of water. Other staff members nearby had begun to notice too, this young woman who came in every day, always with her baby, always silent, always waiting. One of the volunteers whispered to another, "She's the one whose husband's in the coma, didn't know she had no one else." Emily sat down, holding her baby close as the nurse quietly asked, "Does he respond to anything?" Emily shook her head, eyes focused on a memory only she could see. "I read him the same bedtime story every day, the one we picked out before she was born. I talk about what she did that morning, what I'm scared of, what I hope for." She hesitated, her voice cracking. "Sometimes I think I'm crazy, but what if one of these sounds, one of her little laughs, is the thing that brings him back?" Around her, people began to listen, not just the nurse, but others in the room who had earlier whispered and judged. A man who had once scoffed now looked down, uncomfortable. The elderly woman who had shaken her head earlier stared with quiet remorse. The atmosphere shifted. Judgment gave way to silence, then to something gentler, respect, perhaps even awe. They weren't watching an irresponsible mother anymore. They were witnessing something rare and beautiful, a woman refusing to give up on love, even when hope seemed impossible. A sudden sound broke the stillness of the room, a soft giggle. Emily's baby had awakened, cooing and laughing at the ceiling lights above. The nurse smiled and bent down to play with her tiny fingers, but Emily sat upright, her breath catching in her throat. Moments later, a commotion stirred near the hallway. A different nurse burst through the double doors, calling out to the one standing beside Emily. "Room 212, he moved." The words hit Emily like a lightning bolt. "What do you mean?" she whispered, clutching her baby tightly. "He moved his hand. Just once, but he moved. First time in 3 weeks." The nurse's voice was full of wonder. Emily stood slowly, her legs shaky. The baby looked up at her, wide-eyed and innocent, as if sensing something important had just happened. Emily followed the nurse down the corridor, her heart pounding louder with every step. Doctors surrounded the bed as monitors beeped and lights flashed softly. Her husband's fingers twitched again, this time stronger. Emily stepped closer, her baby beginning to babble softly. One of the doctors looked up, stunned. "We think he's responding to sound, familiar sound." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She leaned in, gently placing their baby next to him. "She's here," she whispered. "We're here." In that moment, the laughter of a child, the same sound so many had seen as a nuisance, had reached a heart lost in silence. And for the first time, hope filled the room like sunlight through a window. Days passed, and Emily's visits continued, this time filled with cautious hope. Her husband, once still and unresponsive, began showing small signs of waking, a flutter of the eyes, a slight squeeze of her hand, the slow turn of his head toward their baby's voice. Then, one morning, as Emily read softly from the worn children's book they'd once chosen together, his eyes opened. Fully. Blinking, confused, but aware. Emily froze, barely breathing. "Honey," she whispered, reaching for his hand. His lips parted, dry and slow. Baby." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She nodded, placing their daughter beside him. The baby giggled, reaching for his finger. He smiled, weak but unmistakable. Outside the room, nurses stood quietly, watching with tearful smiles. Some who had once passed judgment now looked on with admiration. Word had spread through the hospital. The mother who brought her baby every day, not out of carelessness, but out of unwavering love, had done the impossible. Emily sat beside his bed, their daughter nestled in her lap. She looked at him with the same hope she had carried through every sleepless night. "We never stopped waiting," she said. "She never stopped trying to bring you back." And she had. In the quiet that followed, it became clear, the baby's cries, her laughter, her very presence, had helped lead a man back to life. What once seemed irresponsible was, in truth, an act of pure, transformative love. And everyone finally understood.